Kind of amazing. You run around doing your whole life, and then you walk and you run around and you set up the bendo when you do this and you do that, and then you rush over and you sit down and then you go. Right here. The whole world. It's what we thought it was, and it's not what we thought it was, and. Carol sitting in the snow? You sitting in the snow? Are you? Oh, good heavens. We're everywhere. Arizona. So we've been in Sangha practicing with koans, doing another round practicing with koans. And we've been using Joan Sutherland's True Force of every color. I thought I'd just begin with a quote by her from a chapter called Introduction to Koan Practice. Each koan is a small moment, a vignette that contains the universe. It's a lovely perspective to keep being reminded of. And pretty soon it becomes the default perspective of your walking around life, which is a turn of events as profound as any eye can imagine. Each koan is a small moment. Each small moment is a small moment that contains the entire universe. That's what happens when we sit down in the middle of it. Very particular, each breath, each thought, each feeling, each arising, each passing. And Zazen body, Zazen mind. We remember that it's the whole universe. It's so much bigger than anything we could even imagine. Dogen says in Only a Buddha and a Buddha, a beautiful fascicle, the entire universe is the true human body. The entire universe is the gate of liberation. The entire universe is the true human body. And the entire universe is the gate of liberation. That's what we remember or remember together instead of chopping it all up. It's full and round and boundless. One of my most favorite koans. Hopefully, as we pick up koans over and over, there. Oh, Debbie and Joey are there. The whole universe in each little box. We remember ourselves back to hands and eyes and feet and toes. And this hand remembers this hand. And this hand remembers that hand. That we're all walking together and breathing together. That's what we begin to find and remember in Zazen. So here's one of my most favorite koans before I got distracted. Hopefully parts of these koans will stick. Sometimes you won't even know they stick. Then all of a sudden something will happen and a phrase will pop up or a word will pop up. And then you'll be surprised that 10 years or 20 years or 30 or 40 years later, it's popping up again and again, and it's like this really close and intimate friend. You probably heard this from me before. A student asked Zhao Zhou, what is Zazen? Zhao Zhou said it's non-zazen, it's non-meditation. And the student goes, how can Zazen be non-Zazen? Why isn't it meditation? What are you playing around with here? Would you just give me a straight answer? There's another koan that says, I'm digressing, there's another koan that says, one of the students says, would you just tell me what's going on here? And the master, so to speak, says, if I told you, you'd never forgive me. But you can't tell somebody. Anything I tell you is just going to be telling you. You have to find out for yourself. You have to sit down and talk.
We've lost sound, Chris. Sorry to interrupt. I don't know if it would be possible for you to leave and come back in. I've never asked a teacher to leave before, but
Now? You can hear me now? Okay. So what is the koan of one Zoom box going in and out? What is the sound of one hand clapping? What is the sound of, you heard it 1 minute and it's gone the next? Who knows? Okay, so here's the koan, the second koan. Maybe you heard it's alive. It's alive. It's alive. Daizhang asked Faiyan, where are you going from here? And Faiyan said, I'm on pilgrimage. We're all on pilgrimage, going from one place to another. Sometimes when we know we're on pilgrimage, we at least know it has some spiritual frame around it, this life. Life is a pilgrimage, but we still think we're getting someplace or we're going someplace. Daizhang says, what sort of thing is pilgrimage? What exactly is it you think you're doing here? Faiyan said, I don't know. When you really put it that way, I don't know. Daizhang said, not knowing is most intimate. Not knowing is most intimate.
Zhang suddenly had the experience of waking up, going beyond this or that, or going someplace or getting something, not knowing. How much can we give ourselves, even in a short period like today with Zazen? Just sit down, stand up, sit down, stand up, in breath, out breath. Can you hear the sound of the rain? Can you hear the sound of the silence? Can you feel your own breath? Here's another koan. Ling Yun was wandering in the mountains and became lost in his walking. He rounded a bend and saw peach blossoms on the other side of the valley. Maybe right now we might say plum blossoms on the other side of the valley, cherry blossoms just starting here. And the sight awakened him. And then he wrote this poem. For 30 years, I searched for a master swordsman, someone who could help me cut through, to understand, to wake up. How many times, how many years did the leaves fall and the branches burst into bud? But from the moment I saw the blossoms, I've had no doubt. And later someone did a commentary on this. The village peach blossoms didn't know their own pink, but still they freed Ling Yun from all his doubts. There was no self-consciousness in the blossoms. Hi, I think you ought to probably go over to that door over there.
Okay.
Sure. Can we be surprised and porous? Whatever comes in the door and whatever comes in the sense gates and our eyes and our ears, can each thing wake us up? So that we have no doubt that we're alive and that the world is alive. So it's the equinox, not quite, but close. Equinox. We say this thing equinox, right? What is it? What is it? I don't know, but I looked it up. Here's what I found out. The vernal equinox is a momentous poem among moments, overspilling its borders like the swelling of sunlight it heralds. Wow, that already sort of makes the equinox feel alive, like something's happening that's bigger than our own small little view. As with everything else about the seasons, the equinox is the result of Earth's sizable tilt. Do you ever think about, try to imagine that we're on an Earth that's spinning in space that has a sizable tilt? What does that do to who we think we are and what our perspective is? 23.5 degrees relative to the plane of the orbit. That tilt is fairly fixed. And as Earth makes its way on its circumsolar migration and rotates on its imaginary skewer, The northern tip of the skewer always points towards the same spot in space. The bold sparkle of Polaris, the North Star. Now, is that amazing? It's always pointing towards the North Star. And we're also just a little bit tilted all the time. Sometimes the northern skewer tip happens to be facing the sun, and the northern hemisphere is bathed in the direct sunbeams and generous long days of summer, while the southern hemisphere receives only indirect light and hence calls the time winter. You pick up any one piece of this, that we are so sure that we are in a season and that something completely opposite is happening on the other side of this planet that we all share? And then 6 months later, the scene is reversed, with the northern axis tilted away from the sun and its hemisphere left to make do with the sun's cool, oblique glances. Twice a year, the axial skewer tips are pointing neither toward nor away from the sun, but instead are positioned exactly off to the side. If you could imagine being on the sun, can you imagine being on the sun? And looking out toward our imaginary skewered Earth, it would look like a ball of yarn with a knitting needle stuck through it, a perfect profile. These are the times of the equinox, when the linked geometry of Earth's rotational and orbital planes together bestow a day of equal parts night and light across the entire globe. And while the equinox is formally calculated based on the moment when the Earth first enters its profile position, the sun is so comparatively huge that it takes us time to pass any point of it, and the equinoctial conditions will effectively persist for several days. Is your mind being sufficiently blown? Imagination. Imagination. But it's not fantasy. It's based on, well, here, archaeological evidence abounds that astronomy is among the oldest of professions, and that people attended with particular zeal to the equinoxes and the solstices. So people have been imagining or using their imaginations to try to comprehend the mystery and the vastness of that which is turning in us and which we are turning. And then we today just say the equinox, and then we change our clocks. The Great Sphinx of Egypt, for example, built some 4,500 years ago, is positioned to face towards the sun rising on the vernal equinox. In the 1,500-year-old Mayan city of Chichen Itza in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, the magnificent Kukulkan Pyramid, I apologize for my mispronunciation, practically slithers to life each spring equinox evening as the waning sun casts a shadow along its steps of 7 perfectly symmetrical isosceles triangles, a pattern that suggests the diamond back skin of a snake. Can you even begin to imagine? And that this has happened across time and space and all over the world? And then we just sit down in Zazen on the axis of our own spine, on a planet that is hurling itself through time and space and skewered in relationship to the sun. Gives you goosebumps, this article from the New York Times says. a primal sense of your connection to the bigger universe. Here's a little bit of what Joan Sutherland might suggest. Just in case you're sitting on your cushion and you forget this grand view, and you're just kind of going round and round in your own head and your own problems, and you're feeling, well, I hadn't thought of this, but we could take the matter. You're feeling a little skewered in your own life, or maybe the world is feeling a little skewered, or maybe we're not quite on course. She says the underlying assumption of the koans is that being a human being isn't a problem to be fixed through spiritual practice, but a precious, disturbing, wondrous, devastating experience that we ought to take full advantage of if we can. Don't waste this life. Even the much maligned self doesn't need to be dismantled, just redirected to its own business, which is the survival of the organism and a sense of continuity in the life the organism is leading. Just sit down here. It's all right here. Throughout the koans, there's a focus on serving, meaning caring for a world as wondrous and devastating as we are. Koans, these little moments, these poems, the mystery. Practice is to open a path into the world, a path that recognizes the luminous nature of things and also the complicated poignancy of embodied life. In this practice, we become the mixing ground of the vast eternal world and the swirl of a particular body, heart, and mind, condition, and circumstance. In a small and local way, we agree to step into a world in progress and to help it dream on and become what it truly is. Be lonely, being a little self in the midst of this vast universe, in the midst of all the turnings, in the midst of all the problems, in the midst of whatever we think is or isn't happening in our lives. The existential loneliness of selfhood is eased by enlarging our awareness. First within ourselves and then into the rest of the world. Sometimes it's called unselfing. How much can we unskewer ourselves so that we can find true north? So that we can find the ground and the heavens and sit upright in the midst of the turning and being turned and know that there is fundamentally nothing wrong, so that we can stand up and respond. In this responsive state, sometimes called thusness or suchness. That includes all things, that is all things, that goes beyond all things, and it's just this. It's just this. And it includes everything. Chitao of the Sandokai says, we and everything we perceive are both interwoven and not interwoven. This interweaving continues on and on while each thing stands in its own place. What is your Dharma position? Just this moment, just Constance being completely Constance. Jenny being completely Jenny. Sojourner Truth. You know Sojourner Truth? I remember going in Washington, D.C. to the museum, the Smithsonian, the relatively new way should have happened a long time ago. Museum of African Americans, and I had never met Sojourner Truth face to face in the way that I came around a corner, and there she was. I was so surprised that across time and space, this amazing, strong African American slave, no longer slave woman, could speak so directly. She says, "Oh God, I did not know you were so big." A little later, "I know you and I don't know you. I know you and I don't know you. And I met it all when I met her. Long since dead. And a portrait on the wall that wasn't dead at all." That's how it is with ancestors, is they speak to us, alive. And the more we keep people in frames, like frames on the computer, the more we keep ourselves in frames. Oh God, I did not know you were so big. Oh Elaine, I did not know you were so big. Oh Marilyn, I did not know you were so big. I know you and I don't know you. Oh, each raindrop, I did not know that you contained the entire world. It is up to each one of us. Exactly how you turn awakening into matter will be entirely particular to you. It is up to you to take up what the ancients called the great matter of your life. The great matter of alive. The great matter of being on a pilgrimage. Birth, death. Birth, death. Birth, death. Spinning in space. Only known exactly through right here. And we call it the equinox. We call it a one-day sitting. We call it Marie. We call it Kristen. Don't miss this life. Student asked Xiaozhou, what is Zazen? It is non-Zazen. How can Zazen be non-Zazen? It's alive. It's alive. Daizhang asked Fayan, where are you going from here? Where do you think you're going? Where do you think you've been? What do you think this is all about? Oh, I'm on pilgrimage. And what sort of thing is this pilgrimage? I don't know. I don't know. Commentary on this koan. To know is arrogance, to not know is stupidity. Not knowing is most intimate. What is this not knowing that is most intimate? Let it come closer and closer. I don't know. Don't know. Don't know. Alive. Lingyan was wandering in the mountains on pilgrimage and became lost. And suddenly he rounded a bend. And right there, peach blossoms on the other side of the valley. I was wandering from here to the bathroom in the rain. And suddenly I rounded a bend. And there was a little dirt throw of a gopher erupting from the underworld. What is going on here in this turning of birth and death in this world that I think is just my life going somewhere? For 30 years, I searched for something to cut through. How many times have the season turned and the branches burst into bud? And then the moment I heard the raindrop, the moment the bell rang, to begin the period, to end the period. The wonder of sharing this planet with a gopher, and with the sun and the moon and the stars and the North Star and what we call the equinox, and Mayans who made serpents slither upstairs in the turning light. You don't have to know anything. Please know what you know, and please let go of it moment after moment after moment, so that the whole world can come close and intimate. Open your senses, your eye gates. It's a Zazen instruction forgotten. Is when you sit down, is open your sense gates. Let your eyes come back into your head. They're not out there. Big, wide open, soft eyes. Open your ears. There's a koan that says, hear with your eyes and see with your ears. What is that? What is it? Open your sense gates beyond knowing, not knowing, beyond the edge of your skin. Let the sound of the rain, maybe we'll crack the door open for a minute, just for a minute while we're sitting, or maybe in the snow, or maybe wherever you are. Not knowing is most intimate. It's alive. Okay, ready, set, go. We're gonna do some vows. You have one more period of zazen and then service. And during that time, the sun is turning on the axis, and the sun is so big we can't even begin to imagine, and the North Star, and on and on and on. Feel your feet on the ground. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to become it. We can all stand up. So let's put our chairs, cushions at home, rearrange your room in whatever way for walking meditation. And let's, during this walking meditation, let's open the doors, whether you're inside or outside, and let's let the sound of the rain come in. If you're at home and you're someplace where you can crack a window or in whatever way is possible. Let your sense gates open for what's around you. Do 10 minutes of walking meditation. Why don't you keep it open, Sherry, when you go out?